What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 12 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your quarterback preview to kick things off this week. I'll have previews for every position out in the next couple of days. Quarterbacks and running backs here on Wednesday, then wide receivers and defense on Thursday, and then a depth chart update on Friday to help get you all set for setting your lineups for the 12th week of the 2021 season. Let's dive right into it and take a look at the quarterback options this week. And here are the presumed starters for this week for the 4 games on the schedule. We've got some interesting quarterback situations to talk about with some of these teams, but we'll go through all of those. But let's go top down here price-wise. It starts with Cody Fajardo up top. $11,163 is his price for the week, and it comes as the most expensive one to pick from, and rightfully so, because he's a pretty darn good quarterback. Outside of Matt Schultz, who's only played 1 game, he's got the best average this year out of any of these starters available this week, and 17.1 points in 9 games for him. I have him as a yellow light option this week. I think he could have a big game and be worth the price to put in your lineup, but I think he could also have the potential of being a disappointment at the price point. To get 2.5 points per $1,000, that's what that 2.5x column means. If you're new to these fantasy videos, that's kind of what I consider full value, because it will help you get a 100-point week if everybody puts up at least 2.5 points per $1,000 you spend on them. Fajardo, you're looking to get 27.9. That's a pretty tough total for any quarterback to hit. Very rarely do we see a QB hit that. In fact, the last time that happened, just looking at my charts here, would have been Michael Riley back in Week 6 against Ottawa was the last time we saw a quarterback put that up. We've seen some point totals in the 20s and more so in the lower 20s so far this year, but very few over that 28-point mark. The reason I think it could be a very good week for Fajardo is because he's getting some great help back at the receiver position. He's getting Shaq Evans has finally been practicing with the #1 offense this week, and new addition Duke Williams has also been practicing there. So those are 2 major pieces. They're major pieces that are going to be good at bringing down the deep balls, which I think Fajardo has been wanting to throw a little more this year, but hasn't been able to. Yeah, I think there could be some big yardage to gain there for this this offense and for Fajardo. But the reason I'm not saying go ahead is because it is such a tough matchup price-wise to get that 28 points. And the matchup with Calgary, give Calgary credit. In recent weeks, they've really shut things down from the quarterbacks. Back in the first 3 weeks of the season, QBs were putting up over 20 points against them. Since then, outside of that rare 33-point performance Trevor Harris put up against them back in, I think it was Week 5, the highest total any QB has scored against Calgary has been 14.7 points, which was just this last week from the combo of Michael Riley and Nathan Rourke. So they've honed things in defensively very well as the season has gone on there in Calgary, and I think especially, Fajardo, 2 of his worst games of the year did come in matchups with Stampeders, so I'm cautious on him in that regard. Moving on to Michael Riley of the BC Lions. Tough matchup with the Bombers. I think you got to stay away from Riley. He's so expensive at $11,000. Same things I said with Fajardo. You're looking for 27.6 points to hit full value. I don't think he gets there against Winnipeg. We, once again, a team that hasn't given up points in the 4th quarter. I think that it's only 3 passing touchdowns they've allowed all year. And Riley himself has struggled in recent weeks. In his last 2 games against the Bombers and the Stampeders, he's put up a combined 10 fantasy points in those 2 games. So I think it hasn't helped to be without his go-to receiver in Lucky Whitehead. Has certainly hurt him in that regard. And the lack of the run game, I think, is catching up with the Lions a little bit. because they're becoming very predictable, and you know they're going to be throwing the ball on most downs. So I say stay away from Michael Riley for Week 12. Next up, McLeod Bethel Thompson of the Toronto Argonauts, who has kind of taken over the starting job there again in Toronto, and has been doing pretty well in his past 3 games. 16.4, 13.3, and 22.7 were his totals in those games. Faces off with the Montreal Alouettes this week, who he put up 16.4 points against just back in week number 8. Averaging 16 points a game on the year. I think the price is a little high on Bethel Thompson as well. I think they're, 26 points in a game is a bit of a reach maybe for him, but we've seen, go back to 2019. This was a guy that was playing on one of the worst teams in the league in Toronto and was one of the best passers in the CFL. So I think he's got the talent there. I think he can make some big plays, and I think he could get it done. He does have 2 games this year over 22 points already, so he's been close on the value. I think the price is maybe a little bit high, and I think the matchup with Montreal may be also a little bit tougher, because they are better against quarterbacks than most teams in the league. So I am cautious on Bethel Thompson. I'm also saying yellow light on Jeremiah Mazzoli, $9,655. Had his best game of the season last time for Hamilton, putting up 24.7 points against the Argos, which is, if you get that, you're happy with what you're getting out of Mazzoli. And certainly he does have a favorable matchup with the Ottawa Redblacks, who are the worst team in the league against quarterbacks this year, giving up over 20 points a game on average. The only reason I'm so tempted to greenlight Jeremiah Mazzoli, but outside of that game against Toronto, we just have not seen the performances from him this year. It seemed like kind of an anomaly, 10.6, 7.5, and 12.3 in his other 3 games, and just did not look good. He should be getting Brandon Banks back in the lineup this week, although Banks hasn't really gotten anything going this year for Hamilton. So I'd be tempted to put Mazzoli closer to the green light category than some of these other options potentially, but I think there is still some concern there that he does only have that 1 big week on the year. And Ottawa at times, can deliver defensively. In their past 5 games, they've had 2 games over 20 they've given up, and they've had 3 games in the 10 to 15 point range. So I could see it going either way here for Mazzoli and the Ticats. Moving on to Zach Collaros of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, $8,872. Last week against Edmonton, putting up 14.4 points. Full value for him would be 22.2 on the week. And he's only hit that total 1 time on the year that he has gotten over 20 points. And that happened to be against BC back in week number 9. And the Lions, who started the year defensively so well and were hard to pick against, all of a sudden in the past few weeks, it's trailed off a little bit for them. Collaros throwing for over 400 yards against the Lions back in week number 9, which makes a matchup with them once again, and especially at home where the Bombers play their best, pretty darn tempting, actually, to put Collaros as the quarterback this week. I think it's a great matchup. I think he's got a great offense. The concern for me is, of course, that he just hasn't broken 20. He hasn't broken 300 yards passing in any other game this year. Most games, he's hovering in that 200-yard range and a couple of touchdowns. So I think he's got a pretty consistent floor most weeks for you, and it's not a bad pick in that sense. But I don't think you should be expecting Collaros to potentially put you up the 30-point week. Looking at the next option here, Bo Levi Mitchell of the Calgary Stampeders. I'm saying stay away on that one. $8,472 is his price. 21.2 is his full value production line. Through 7 games this year, he's averaged just 10.8 points, and that's why I'm saying stay away from Bo. It seems like Calgary has been on more of a roll in recent weeks. They've won 3 straight games, but in that span, yes, he's gotten things going more offensively, but his highest point total is still just 15.1 points in those last 3 games. So, including 2 against the Riders, where he put up 12.3 and 13.4. So, yes, things have gotten better for Calgary, but Bo Levi Mitchell is not the fantasy superstar we once saw him as. So I say stay away from him. I think there's other great options around the price point. And to me, the best option on the week is Matthew Shiltz of the Montreal Alouettes. $8,416. You want 21 points out of him. Last week, he delivered that, 21.4 against the Red Blacks. I thought he looked real good in his first start with Montreal. And even in the couple of games where before that, where he got in only for a few plays due to Vernon Adams getting injured, I thought Shiltz showed some bright flashes. And, you know, Montreal just made the big trade to bring in Trevor Harris at the quarterback position this weekend after that last game. And, you know, maybe Shiltz feels a little bit of pressure here that, you know, he's got to perform here and get the job done. Otherwise, who knows? Maybe Trevor Harris does come in and take over the starting job. So I think Shiltz is going to be striving, not that he doesn't regularly, but maybe a bit of an extra oomph this week in that sense. And, you know, 21.4 points last week. This week he faces an Argos defense that in their three of their last 4 games, Toronto's given up over 23 points to quarterbacks. 26.3, 23.1, 12.9, and 25. So there's been some big totals put up against the Argos here in the past number of weeks. And I like the matchup with Shiltz, especially given some of the injuries Toronto has had. Now, granted, I think some of their guys like Hinock Mwamba are starting to get back into the lineup a little bit, but I still like the performance here from Shiltz, especially with all the great options available to him at wide receiver. And I've had him in my lineup as my quarterback option, as my cheap value play the last number of weeks, but I gotta say red light on Caleb Evans this time around. $5,431. He's considerably cheaper than any of the other starters. You only need 13.6 points out of him, which, I mean, he's averaged 13.7 through 4 games, but it's a little concerning. In his past 3 games, he's thrown, in at least 2 of them, he's thrown 3 interceptions. He hasn't really gotten the ball moving efficiently in any of those games, and I think we could see a case this week. You know, the Red Blacks are effectively in prepare for next year mode, and we saw Taron Christian come in a little bit last game for Ottawa. He did end up, you know, leaving the game with injuries, so it sounds like Duck Hodges will be the backup to Evans this week, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them give him a couple looks late in this game, especially if the score is a bit out of reach here. So I would say be cautious and stay away from Evans. Yes, the value play is tempting, but the play we've seen from him in recent weeks, coupled with potentially not playing the entire game, I would say is a matchup to stay away from here, especially against a good Ticats defense that has really rounded into form in the last little while. So those are your options at quarterback for week number 12. Again, really like Matthew Shiltz, but I think there's also some good plays available with Fajardo, Bethel Thompson, Mazzoli, and Collaros that could potentially get you your point total as well. As I mentioned off the top of the show, stay tuned for the running backs and the wide receivers out later today. The running backs later today on Wednesday, the wide receivers and defense on Thursday, and depth chart update out on Friday to make sure you pick guys that are actually going to play this week. You know, there's some players at each position that are kind of maybes for this week. A couple I forgot to touch on for the quarterbacks. You know, Trevor Harris going to Montreal. He won't dress this week. Dane Evans is back on the active roster for Hamilton, but Orlando Steinauer has mentioned that Mazzoli will get the start this week yet again, and as I talked about already, potentially Devlin Hodges getting some reps in for Ottawa. So yeah, those are your updates on the quarterbacks for this week. Stay tuned for the other positions. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't, If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. You can find a link to that in the video description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, check the description as well. There's a link there to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix League over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play alongside myself and other viewers this week and every week throughout the 2021 CFL season. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.